Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Lie. The suburban neighborhood of Willowbrook seemed frozen in time, with its perfectly manicured lawns and white picket fences. For 12 years, Danny Rourke had called this place home, building what he believed was an unshakable foundation with his wife Rebecca and their twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, now 10 years old. Danny owned Rourke Security Solutions, a private investigation and personal security firm he'd built from the ground up after leaving the military. His background as a special forces operative had taught him patience, precision, and the art of reading people. These skills had made him wealthy, respected, and unfortunately for his enemies, very dangerous when crossed. Rebecca Martinez Rourke had been the perfect wife on paper. A former marketing executive who'd given up her career to raise their daughters. She maintained their home with military precision and hosted neighborhood gatherings that were the envy of Willowbrook. Her dark hair and warm smile had captivated Danny 12 years ago at a charity gala, and he'd pursued her with the same intensity he'd once reserved for military missions. The twins, Emma and Sophie, were Danny's pride and joy. Emma, the older by 3 minutes, had inherited his analytical mind and love of puzzles. Sophie was the artist, always drawing or painting, her creative spirit reminding Danny of his own mother. He'd spent countless hours teaching them self-defense, helping with homework, and building an elaborate treehouse in their backyard that had become the neighborhood's marvel. But beneath the surface of their perfect life, cracks had been forming for months. Danny's trained, I had begun noticing small inconsistencies. Rebecca's phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room, unexplained absences during her book club meetings, and a distance in her eyes that she couldn't quite hide. His instincts, honed by years of investigation work, whispered warnings he chose to ignore, hoping love could overcome whatever shadows lurked in their marriage. The morning of what would become the last Father's Day started like any other. Danny woke early, as was his habit, and found Rebecca already in the kitchen preparing his coffee exactly how he liked it. Black, no sugar. The twins were still asleep, and the house held that peaceful quiet he'd grown to cherish. "Happy Father's Day, baby," Rebecca said, kissing his cheek with what seemed like genuine affection. But Danny's trained senses caught something else, a nervous energy, like someone playing a role they'd rehearsed. "Thank you, sweetheart," he replied, studying her face. "Any special plans today?" "Just family time," she answered quickly, avoiding his gaze. "The girls have something special planned for you later." As the day progressed, Danny noticed more small details that didn't add up. Rebecca kept checking her phone with an urgency that seemed out of place for a relaxed family Sunday. The twins, usually chatty and excited about surprises, seemed coached in their responses, speaking in careful, measured tones that didn't match their natural personalities. During lunch, Danny's phone rang. It was Trevor Blake, his business partner and closest friend since their military days. Trevor's security firm handled corporate clients while Danny focused on private investigations, but they shared resources and trusted each other implicitly. "Danny, I need to talk to you." Trevor's voice carried an unusual tension. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the office?" "It's Father's Day, Trev. Can it wait until tomorrow?" "No, brother. It can't. Trust me on this." Danny glanced at Rebecca, who was pretending not to listen, while wiping the same spot on the counter for the third time. "I'll be there in an hour." The drive to his office gave Danny time to think. Trevor wasn't the type to interrupt family time without good reason. As he pulled into the parking lot of the building that housed Rourke Security Solutions, he saw Trevor's car already there, along with another vehicle he didn't recognize. Inside, Trevor wasn't alone. A woman in her 40s with graying hair and tired eyes sat across from his desk. She introduced herself as Patricia Kellner, a private investigator from the next county. "Mr. Rourke," Patricia began, "I've been hired by a client to investigate a missing person case. During my investigation, I've uncovered information that I believe you need to see." She placed a manila folder on the desk between them. "Your wife has been meeting regularly with a man named Vincent Castellano. They've been seen together at various locations over the past 8 months. Danny's face remained impassive, but his hands clenched slightly. Go on. Vincent Castellano is a former associate of yours from your military days. He was discharged dishonorably for conduct violations and has since worked as a freelance security consultant. More importantly, Mr. Rourke, my investigation suggests he may be the biological father of your twin daughters. The words hit Danny like a physical blow, but years of training kept his expression neutral. What evidence do you have? Patricia opened the folder, revealing photographs, documents, and a detailed timeline. Medical records show Rebecca was treated at a clinic in Nevada 11 years ago, around the time of conception. Vincent Castellano was also in Nevada during that period, working a security contract. There are also these. She handed him several photographs showing Rebecca and Vincent in intimate embraces, taken at various locations over recent months. The final photograph showed Vincent entering Danny's own home while Danny was away on business. Trevor leaned forward. Patricia came to me first because she knew our firms sometimes cooperate. I thought you should hear this from a friend. Danny studied the evidence with the same methodical approach he used in his professional work. The timeline made sense. Rebecca's sudden desire to visit her sick aunt in Nevada 11 years ago. The twins' unusual eye color that didn't match either his or Rebecca's family. Vincent's unexpected appearance in their city 8 months ago, around the time Rebecca's behavior began changing. There's more, Patricia continued. I have audio recordings from their meetings. They've been planning something for today. Vincent has been pressing Rebecca to tell you the truth and leave you for him. They believe you'll be too shocked and heartbroken to fight for custody or cause problems. Danny's laugh was cold and humorless. They clearly don't know me very well. He stood up, his mind already formulating plans. Patricia, I need copies of everything. Trevor, I need you to implement Protocol 7. Trevor's eyes widened. Protocol 7 was their code for complete surveillance and investigation of a target, typically reserved for their most serious corporate espionage cases. Danny, are you sure? Protocol 7 is comprehensive, invasive, and thorough. Danny finished. Exactly what I need. I want to know everything about Vincent Castellano, his finances, his contacts, his weaknesses, his fears. Everything. As Danny drove home, his phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. The girls are so excited to give you your Father's Day surprise. Come home soon. Red heart. He stared at the heart emoji, feeling a cold fury building in his chest. For 12 years, he'd built his life around what he thought was his family. He'd loved those girls as his own, protected them, provided for them, shaped their futures. And now he was about to learn that it had all been built on the most fundamental lie possible. But Vincent and Rebecca had made one crucial mistake. They assumed Danny would react like a normal, heartbroken husband. They didn't understand that they were dealing with a man who'd spent years in the world's most dangerous places, who'd learned that the difference between predator and prey often came down to who struck first and who struck hardest. As he pulled into his driveway, Danny saw the twins' faces pressed against the living room window, watching for his return. Despite everything, his heart clenched. Whatever sins Rebecca and Vincent had committed, those girls had been innocent children caught in the middle. But innocence, Danny had learned long ago, was often the first casualty of war. Chapter 2. The Revelation. Danny entered his home with the measured calm of a man who'd learned to compartmentalize extreme emotions. The living room had been decorated with handmade Father's Day banners, and the twins rushed toward him with barely contained excitement. Daddy! Daddy! Sophie grabbed his hand while Emma bounced on her toes. We have the best surprise ever for you. Looking at their faces, Danny searched for any resemblance to himself, any feature that might contradict Patricia's devastating evidence. Emma's green eyes. He'd always assumed they came from Rebecca's grandmother. Sophie's dimpled chin. Rebecca had claimed it skipped generations in her family. Now, every explanation felt like another carefully constructed lie. I can't wait to see it, he managed, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, wearing the blue sundress he'd bought her for their anniversary. Her smile seemed brighter than usual, almost manic in its intensity. "Honey, before the girls give you their surprise, why don't you sit down? I'll get you a beer." Danny settled into his favorite armchair, the same spot where he'd read bedtime stories, helped with homework, and bandaged scraped knees. The irony wasn't lost on him that this might be where his world officially ended. Emma stepped forward, holding a homemade card decorated with glitter and crayon drawings. Her voice was unusually formal as she began to speak, as if reciting lines she'd memorized. "Happy Father's Day, Daddy. This is our last Father's Day with you." Danny's blood turned to ice, but he kept his expression neutral. "Last Father's Day? Are you planning to grow up that fast?" Sophie giggled nervously and shook her head. "No, silly, because you're not our real daddy." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Danny felt something fundamental shift inside him, like a switch being flipped from protection mode to predator mode. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" His voice remained gentle, though his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Emma opened the card and held it up for him to see. Inside, along with childish drawings of stick figures, someone had glued a photograph. The picture showed a man Danny recognized all too well, Vincent Castellano, in his military uniform from 15 years ago. "Mommy showed us pictures of our real father," Emma continued in that same rehearsed tone. "She said you've been taking care of us, but our real daddy is coming home now." Danny's eyes moved to Rebecca, who stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her face pale but determined. "Rebecca." His voice carried a quiet authority that made her flinch. In 12 years of marriage, she'd heard that tone only a handful of times, usually when he was dealing with a serious security threat for a client. "Danny, we need to talk." "Yes," he said softly. "We do." The doorbell rang, its chime echoing through the suddenly silent house. Danny didn't move, his gaze fixed on his wife's face as she visibly steeled herself. "That's him," she whispered. Sophie clapped her hands excitedly. "Our real daddy is here." Danny stood slowly, every movement deliberate and controlled. "Girls, go to your room. Now." Something in his tone cut through their excitement. Emma, always the more perceptive of the twins, grabbed Sophie's hand and pulled her toward the stairs. "But Daddy, now." The single word carried enough authority to send both girls scurrying upstairs. Rebecca moved toward the front door, but Danny's voice stopped her. "Don't." She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. "Danny, please. Let me explain. You've had 11 years to explain. You chose to wait until today." He walked past her toward the door, noting how she pressed herself against the wall as he passed. "Interesting timing, Rebecca. Father's Day. Very theatrical." Danny opened the front door to find Vincent Castellano standing on his porch, holding a bouquet of flowers and wearing a confident smile that faltered when he saw Danny's expression. Vincent was exactly as Danny remembered him. 6 feet tall, dark hair now showing gray at the temples, still maintaining the physical fitness of someone who took pride in his appearance. But where Danny's eyes held the cold calculation of a professional, Vincent's showed the desperation of a man trying to reclaim something he'd lost. "Hello, Vincent." "Danny." Vincent's voice carried false bravado. "I suppose Rebecca told you I was coming." "She mentioned it." Danny stepped aside with mock courtesy. "Please come in. We have so much to catch up on." As Vincent entered, Danny caught the scent of expensive cologne and nervous sweat. Behind him, Rebecca had moved to the center of the living room, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Vincent brought flowers," she said unnecessarily, her voice high and strained. "How thoughtful." Danny closed the door with deliberate finality, the click of the lock seeming to echo through the room. "Vincent, you look well. Civilian life agrees with you." "Danny, listen." "No." Danny's voice cut through Vincent's attempt at explanation like a blade. "You'll listen. Both of you. For 12 years, I've built my life around what I believed was my family. I've loved those girls, provided for them, protected them, and shaped every decision around their well-being." He moved to the center of the room, positioning himself so he could see both Rebecca and Vincent clearly. "And today, on Father's Day, I discover that everything I've believed about my life has been a lie. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Danny, please. I wanted to tell you so many times, but what, Rebecca? It was more convenient to let me raise another man's children? More profitable? Did you think I was too stupid to ever figure it out? Vincent stepped forward, his chest puffed with misplaced confidence. Now hold on, Danny. Those are my daughters, and Rebecca is my woman. She always has been. The room went completely silent. Danny's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Your woman. Danny's voice was conversational, almost friendly. That's interesting, Vincent. See, I have some paperwork that says otherwise. Marriage certificates, birth certificates, adoption papers, all bear my name. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through messages. I also have some interesting photographs from a private investigator. Would you like to see them? Rebecca's face went white. Danny, what have you done? What I always do, sweetheart. My homework. He looked up from his phone, his smile cold as winter. Did you really think you could betray someone who makes his living finding out secrets? Vincent's confidence was beginning to crack. Look, Danny, we didn't plan for this to happen. Rebecca and I have history, real history. Those girls deserve to know their real father. Real father? Danny's laugh held no humor. Let me tell you about being a real father, Vincent. A real father is there for midnight fevers and bad dreams. A real father teaches his daughters how to ride bikes and helps them with math homework. A real father protects his family from predators and liars. He stepped closer to Vincent, who involuntarily took a step back. A real father doesn't abandon his pregnant girlfriend to marry another woman and then come back 11 years later to destroy the only family those children have ever known. Rebecca gasped. What? Vincent, you said. Oh, you didn't know? Danny's smile grew wider. Vincent here was married when he got you pregnant, Rebecca. His wife filed for divorce 2 years later when she found out about his serial infidelity. Should I tell her about the other women, or would you prefer to Vincent? The color drained from Vincent's face. That's not relevant, isn't it? See, this is where you two made your mistake. You assumed I'd react like some cuckolded husband in a soap opera. You thought I'd fall apart, maybe beg Rebecca to stay, fight for scraps of a relationship built on lies. Danny's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled genuinely for the first time since entering the house. Ah, perfect timing. What is that? Rebecca asked, her voice barely a whisper. That, my dear wife, is confirmation that phase 1 of my response plan is now complete. He looked between them, his expression almost pleasant. You see, while you two were planning your little Father's Day revelation, I was implementing some plans of my own. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. What kind of plans? Danny's smile became predatory. The kind that ensures neither of you will ever hurt my daughters again. Chapter 3. The Hunter's Web. The tension in the living room was palpable as Danny's phone continued to buzz with incoming messages. Each notification seemed to drain more color from Rebecca's face and add another layer of unease to Vincent's increasingly aggressive posture. Danny, Rebecca began, her voice trembling, whatever you're planning. Planning, Danny interrupted, his tone mockingly innocent. I'm not planning anything, sweetheart. I'm executing. There's a difference. He gestured for them to sit on the couch, and something in his demeanor made them comply without question. Danny remained standing, a position that gave him both physical and psychological advantage. Let me paint you a picture, he began, pacing slowly in front of them. 11 years ago, Vincent, you were working security for a casino in Nevada. Married man, successful career, reputation intact. You had a brief affair with my wife during her visit to see her sick aunt, who, by the way, I've confirmed was perfectly healthy and had no idea Rebecca was in Nevada. Vincent shifted uncomfortably. Ancient history, Danny. Is it? Because 8 months ago, you moved to this city. Not for work. You could have gotten better contracts in Las Vegas or Los Angeles. You moved here specifically to reconnect with Rebecca and claim the daughters you abandoned. Danny pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through documents. You've been meeting at the Riverside Hotel every Tuesday afternoon. Room 237, specifically. Did you know they have excellent security cameras? Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth. You been watching us? Sweetheart, I've been watching everything. Your credit card purchases, your phone records, your email accounts, your social media activity. Did you really think the man who built a security empire wouldn't notice when his own wife was compromising operational security? He turned to Vincent. But you, Vincent, you're the real masterpiece. Did you tell Rebecca about your current financial situation? The gambling debts that total just over $200,000? The loan sharks who've been looking for you in Nevada? Vincent shot to his feet. You son of a bitch, you have no right. Sit down. Danny's voice carried such authority that Vincent found himself complying before he realized it. I have every right. You came into my home, destroyed my children's sense of security, and attempted to steal my family. That gives me all the rights I need. Danny's phone rang. He answered without breaking eye contact with his targets. Trevor? Yes, I'm ready for the next phase. Send them in. Rebecca looked confused and terrified. Send who in? Well, Vincent's creditors, for starters. Turns out they've been very interested in his current whereabouts. I may have accidentally let it slip where they could find him. Vincent's face went ashen. You didn't. Oh, but I did. I also contacted your ex-wife, Vincent. She was very interested to learn about your newfound fatherhood claims, especially since you've been 3 years behind on alimony payments. Danny moved to the window and glanced outside. In fact, I believe that's her car pulling up now, followed by what appears to be some very serious-looking gentleman in a black sedan. Vincent rushed to the window, and his legs nearly gave out when he saw the vehicles. Jesus Christ, Danny, what have you done? I've simply connected people who've been looking for you with your current location. Think of it as a public service. Rebecca stood up on shaky legs. Danny, please. The girls are upstairs, safely out of the way. Unlike their mother, I actually consider their well-being in my decision-making. The doorbell rang again, followed immediately by sharp, insistent knocking. Danny moved toward the door with casual confidence. Now, here's what's going to happen, he announced. Vincent, you're going to walk out that door and deal with your past. All of it. The debts, the broken promises, the lives you've damaged. You came here thinking you could destroy my family and walk away clean. Instead, you're going to discover that some people have longer memories and less patience than I do. Vincent grabbed Danny's arm desperately. Come on, man. We served together. That has to count for something. Danny looked down at Vincent's hand until he released his grip. We served together until you were dishonorably discharged for stealing from fellow soldiers and abandoning your post. The Vincent Castellano I knew died the day you chose to become a predator instead of a protector. The knocking became more insistent, and voices could be heard outside. Vincent looked toward the back of the house, clearly considering escape routes. I wouldn't, Danny advised. My property is fully monitored, and I've taken the liberty of ensuring all exit routes are covered. Your only choice is how you leave, walking with dignity or carried out by people far less patient than I am. Rebecca sank back onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. What about me, Danny? What about our marriage? Danny's expression softened slightly, but his eyes remained cold. Our marriage, Rebecca? Which part was real? The vows where you promised to forsake all others? The adoption papers where you swore I was the girl's father? The 1,000 nights you lied in my face? He knelt in front of her, his voice becoming almost gentle. You had choices, Rebecca. When you got pregnant, you could have told me the truth. When Vincent showed up 8 months ago, you could have sent him away. Instead, you chose deception, manipulation, and betrayal. I was scared, she whispered. I was young and scared, and Vincent disappeared. You were so good to me, so stable. I thought I could make it work. You thought wrong. Danny stood back up as the knocking outside became pounding. You see, Rebecca, I'm not the forgiving type. I've seen what happens when people show mercy to those who betrayed them. It never ends well. Vincent was now visibly sweating, looking between the front door and the stairs leading to the second floor. What about Emma and Sophie? They're my daughters too. Danny's mask of civility finally slipped, revealing the cold fury beneath. Those girls are 10 years old, Vincent. For their entire lives, I've been their father. I've earned that title through love, sacrifice, and dedication. You contributed genetic material and then vanished. That doesn't make you a father. It makes you a sperm donor. The pounding stopped, replaced by the sound of keys in the lock. Danny smiled at their confused expressions. I gave Trevor a spare key. I thought it might be helpful for cleanup. The front door opened, and Trevor entered, followed by Vincent's ex-wife, a hard-looking woman in her 40s, and two men in expensive suits whose bulky frames suggested they weren't there for conversation. "Vincent," the woman said, her voice dripping with venom. "You look surprised to see me." One of the suited men consulted a small notebook. "Mr. Castellano, you've been very difficult to locate. Mr. Torino is most displeased with your efforts to avoid your obligations." Vincent backed against the wall, his bravado completely evaporated. "Listen, I can explain." "The time for explanations has passed," Danny interrupted. "Gentlemen, Mrs. Castellano, Vincent is all yours. Please conduct your business away from my property." As the group moved toward Vincent, Danny turned to Rebecca one last time. "You have 1 hour to pack whatever personal items you need. Trevor will escort you to a hotel for the night. Tomorrow, you'll receive divorce papers and custody documentation. My lawyers are very thorough." "Danny, please," Rebecca begged, "don't do this. We can work through this." "We could have worked through many things, Rebecca, but not this. Not lies about my children's paternity. Not 11 years of deception. Not adultery." His voice grew harder with each word. "And certainly not traumatizing my daughters with your twisted version of Father's Day entertainment." As Vincent was forcibly escorted from the house, his protests and pleas echoing from the driveway, Danny finally allowed himself to look tired. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the confrontation was beginning to fade, leaving behind the weight of his shattered world. Rebecca gathered her purse with shaking hands. "What will you tell the girls?" "The truth. That their mother made choices that destroyed our family, and that sometimes people we love disappoint us in ways that can't be forgiven or forgotten." As Trevor gently but firmly guided Rebecca toward the door, she turned back one last time. "I did love you, Danny. I still do." Danny's smile was sad and final. "No, Rebecca, you love what I could provide. Security, stability, a father for your children. But you never loved me enough to tell me the truth." The house fell silent as Danny stood alone in his living room, surrounded by Father's Day decorations and the wreckage of his former life. Upstairs, he could hear the twins moving around, probably confused and frightened by the voices and commotion. But this was only the beginning. Danny had spent his entire adult life learning that decisive action in a moment of crisis determined who survived and who didn't. Vincent and Rebecca had made the mistake of thinking they could outmaneuver a predator. They were about to learn that some men, when pushed too far, didn't just push back, they obliterated everything that threatened what they protected. And Danny was just getting started. Chapter 4: Collateral Damage. 3 days had passed since what Danny had come to think of as the last Father's Day. The house felt different now, quieter, but not peaceful. It was the silence of a battlefield after the shooting stops, when the survivors take inventory of what's been lost. Emma and Sophie sat at the kitchen table, picking at their breakfast. They hadn't spoken much since Danny explained that Mommy had made some bad choices and wouldn't be living with him anymore. He'd kept the explanation age-appropriate, but the twins were smart enough to sense the fundamental shift in their world. "Daddy," Sophie said quietly, "is Mommy ever coming back?" Danny paused in his coffee preparation. In the 72 hours since Rebecca's removal from their lives, he'd fielded dozens of questions from the twins, each one a small knife to his heart. "No, sweetheart, Mommy won't be coming back to live here." Emma, always the more analytical of the two, looked up from her cereal. "What about the man who said he was our real father?" This was the question Danny had been dreading. After Rebecca left, he'd spent hours researching how to handle this situation, consulting with child psychologists and family lawyers. The consensus was clear. The truth, delivered with care, was better than elaborate lies that would eventually crumble. "That man, Vincent, helped create you," Danny said carefully, sitting down at the table with them. "But that doesn't make him your father." A father is someone who takes care of you, who loves you, who's there when you need him. I've been your father since the day you were born, and I always will be. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. But why did Mommy say he was our real daddy? Because Mommy was confused about some very important things. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they love. Emma pushed her cereal around her bowl thoughtfully. Are you still our daddy, even if we came from him? The question hit Danny like a physical blow. In that moment, looking at these two beautiful girls who'd been the center of his world for 10 years, he realized that biology mattered far less than love. Emma, Sophie, look at me. He waited until both girls met his eyes. You are my daughters. That's not going to change because of anything Mommy said or because of anything any other person claims. You're mine, and I'm yours. Forever. For the first time in 3 days, both girls smiled genuinely. Sophie launched herself from her chair into Danny's arms, followed immediately by Emma. As he held them, Danny felt his resolve solidify into something unbreakable. Whatever war Rebecca and Vincent had started, he would finish it, not just for himself, but for these two girls who deserved better than the chaos their biological parents had tried to create. Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Package delivered. Vincent's situation resolved permanently. Rebecca's legal team requesting meeting. Danny typed back, no meetings. Proceed with phase 2. After getting the twins settled with their summer tutor, a necessity since Rebecca's departure had disrupted their usual childcare routine, Danny drove to his office. The building that housed Rourke Security Solutions had always been his sanctuary, but today it felt like a command center for the war he was waging. Trevor was waiting in the conference room with a stack of files and a grim expression. Danny, we need to talk about Rebecca's situation. What about it? Her lawyer is claiming emotional duress, saying you coerced her into leaving. They're threatening to file for emergency custody of the twins, claiming you're an unfit guardian. Danny's laugh was cold. On what grounds? They're alleging that you have violent tendencies, that you've threatened Vincent with physical harm, and that you've created an unsafe environment for the children. And Vincent, is he available to testify to these alleged threats? Trevor's smile was equally cold. Vincent is no longer in a position to testify to anything. Turns out his gambling debts were more serious than we initially discovered. The people he owed money to were very creative in their collection methods. Danny felt a flicker of satisfaction. Permanently creative? Let's just say Vincent won't be making any more claims about paternity or anything else. While Danny felt no remorse about Vincent's fate, he recognized that Rebecca's legal maneuvering posed a real threat. Despite her infidelity and deception, family courts often favored biological mothers, especially when they claimed to be victims of controlling husbands. What do we know about her lawyer? Trevor consulted his files. Harrison Mills, family law specialist. Good reputation, expensive retainer. Someone's funding Rebecca's legal campaign, and it's not her part-time job at the boutique. Find out who. In the meantime, I want complete surveillance on Rebecca. Where she's staying, who she's talking to, what she's planning. She's made this about the twins, which means this is now total war. That afternoon, Danny received an unexpected visitor. Patricia Kellner, the private investigator who'd first brought him evidence of Rebecca's affair, arrived at his office with new information. Mr. Rourke, I've discovered something about Rebecca's situation that you need to know. She placed a new folder on his desk. Rebecca hasn't been staying at a hotel, as we assumed. She's been living with a man named Marcus Webb. He's a real estate developer with significant financial resources and, more importantly, political connections. Danny studied the photographs and documents. Marcus Webb was in his 50s, divorced, with a reputation for acquiring properties through aggressive tactics and city council influence. How does Rebecca know Marcus Webb? That's where it gets interesting. Marcus has been a client of Vincent's security services for the past 6 months. Vincent introduced them, apparently as part of some larger scheme. The pieces began falling into place in Danny's mind. Vincent needed money, Marcus needed a way to pressure someone, and Rebecca was the perfect tool. There's more. Marcus has been trying to acquire a large tract of land on the north side of town for a development project. The main holdout has been the city planning committee, which requires unanimous approval for projects of that size. Patricia handed him another document. Your neighbor, City Councilman Robert Hayes, has been the primary opponent of Marcus's project. If Marcus could create a scandal involving Robert, say, a connection to a man who threatened violence against a young mother and her children, it might provide the leverage he needs. Danny's blood ran cold. Rebecca's custody claim isn't about the twins. It's about destroying my reputation to get to Robert Hayes. It appears so. Marcus has been funding Rebecca's legal fees and providing her with housing in exchange for her cooperation in portraying you as a dangerous, controlling husband. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Vincent hadn't just destroyed Danny's marriage for personal reasons. He'd done it as part of a larger scheme to manipulate city politics and real estate deals. Rebecca wasn't just an unfaithful wife. She was an active participant in a plot to destroy everything Danny had built. Danny's phone rang. It was the twins' tutor, Mrs. Anderson, and her voice was panicked. Mr. Rourke, you need to come right away. There are people here claiming to be from Child Protective Services. They have a court order to remove Emma and Sophie from your care. The phone fell from Danny's hand as the full scope of Marcus Webb's strategy became clear. This wasn't just about real estate or political leverage. It was about taking his daughters away from him, using the legal system as a weapon to destroy what remained of his family. But Marcus Webb had made one crucial error. He'd assumed that Danny would play by conventional rules, that he would work within a system designed to favor wealth and political connections over truth and justice. Danny picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 5 years. Colonel Morrison? This is Danny Rourke. I need to cash in some favors. All of them. Chapter 5. The Network Activates. The drive to Danny's house felt like the longest 20 minutes of his life. Child Protective Services removing his daughters wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was a direct attack on everything he'd built his identity around. But as he pulled into his driveway, Danny noticed something that brought a grim smile to his face. The CPS van was still there, but it was now flanked by 3 black SUVs and a sedan with government plates. Standing on his front porch, engaged in what appeared to be a very heated discussion with the CPS workers, was Colonel Jack Morrison, Danny's former commanding officer and current head of military intelligence for the Eastern Seaboard. Danny entered his house to find Emma and Sophie sitting on the couch, wide-eyed and clutching their backpacks, while Mrs. Anderson hovered protectively nearby. In the center of the room, a standoff was taking place between 2 CPS caseworkers and Colonel Morrison, who was examining their court order with the scrutiny of someone trained to spot forged documents. Colonel, Danny said, his voice carefully controlled. Captain, Morrison replied, using Danny's former rank. Interesting afternoon you're having here. The senior CPS caseworker, a harried-looking woman in her 40s, turned to Danny with visible relief. Mr. Rourke, I'm Sarah Chun from Child Protective Services. We have a court order requiring the immediate removal of your daughters, pending an investigation into allegations of domestic violence and child endangerment. Danny took the document and read it carefully. The allegations were vague but damning. Claims that he'd threatened violence against the children's mother, that he'd created an unsafe environment, and that he'd isolated the children from their biological parent through intimidation and coercion. These allegations are false, Danny said simply. That's what they all say, the second caseworker muttered. Colonel Morrison stepped forward, his bearing radiating the kind of authority that made people instinctively straighten their posture. Ma'am, before you proceed with removing these children, you might want to verify the authenticity of your court order. I beg your pardon? Morrison handed her a tablet displaying an official government database. According to federal records, the judge who supposedly signed this order, Judge Margaret Foster, has been on medical leave for the past 2 weeks following surgery. She's currently in a rehabilitation facility in Florida, physically incapable of signing legal documents. The color drained from the caseworker's face as she realized the implications. Furthermore, Morrison continued, the case number referenced on this document doesn't exist in the county's legal database. In fact, this appears to be a rather sophisticated forgery designed to circumvent proper legal procedures. Danny felt a surge of admiration for his former commander. Morrison had always been 3 steps ahead of everyone else, and apparently that hadn't changed in the 5 years since Danny had left active duty. "I don't understand," Sarachin stammered. "We received this through proper channels. Our supervisor—" "Your supervisor," Morrison interrupted, "received a call from someone claiming to represent the county attorney's office. That person provided him with a fabricated case file and a fraudulent court order. You and your colleague are victims of an elaborate deception." He turned to Danny with a slight smile. "Fortunately, when certain people reach out to me requesting assistance, I tend to investigate thoroughly before responding." The CPS workers left with apologies and promises to investigate how they'd been manipulated into attempting an illegal child removal. Once they were gone, Morrison turned his attention to the twins, who'd watched the entire proceeding with a wide-eyed fascination of children witnessing adult drama they didn't fully understand. "Girls," Danny said gently, "why don't you go upstairs and play for a while? Mrs. Anderson will stay with you." Once they were alone, Morrison's expression became serious. "Danny, when you called me, you said you needed to cash in favors. I assumed you meant professional assistance. I didn't realize you were dealing with an active conspiracy involving forged legal documents and attempted child abduction. It's complicated, Jack. It always is with you. Start from the beginning." Danny spent the next hour laying out everything: Rebecca's affair, Vincent's disappearance, the real estate conspiracy, Marcus Webb's involvement, and now the forged court order. Morrison listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes on his tablet. "This Marcus Webb," Morrison said when Danny finished, "he's more connected than you realize. We've had him on our radar for some time due to his contracts with defense contractors. He's been using his political connections to secure no-bid contracts for security services at military installations. Meaning his reach extends beyond local politics. If he's willing to forge court documents to manipulate a child custody case, he's likely involved in much more serious criminal activity." Morrison stood and walked to the window, his mind clearly working through options. "Danny, I can protect you and your daughters from immediate threats, but this situation requires a more comprehensive response. Webb has resources, connections, and apparently no ethical boundaries. Fighting him conventionally will be a war of attrition you might not win. What are you suggesting?" Morrison turned back to face him, his expression grim. "I'm suggesting we stop playing defense and start playing offense. Webb wants to use your personal life to further his business interests. Let's examine his business interests and see what we find." That evening, while the twins were asleep, Danny's house became an unofficial command center. Morrison had arrived with 2 other men, David Park, a cybersecurity specialist, and Michael Torres, a financial crimes investigator. Both carried credentials identifying them as federal agents. "Gentlemen," Morrison began, "Mr. Rourke has provided us with evidence of a conspiracy involving real estate fraud, political corruption, and forged legal documents. Our investigation suggests this may be connected to broader criminal activities affecting national security interests." Park looked up from his laptop. "Marcus Webb's financial records are interesting. He's been moving large amounts of money through offshore accounts, and several of his recent property acquisitions were funded through shell companies with questionable ownership structures." Torres added, "The security contracts Morrison mentioned are just the tip of the iceberg. Webb's been using his political connections to secure contract for services his company isn't qualified to provide, then subcontracting the actual work to entities that may not have proper security clearances." Danny felt a familiar sensation, the same focused intensity he'd experienced during military operations when scattered intelligence suddenly formed a clear picture of enemy activities. So Webb isn't just a corrupt developer. He's running a sophisticated criminal enterprise. "It appears so," Morrison confirmed. "And your situation with Rebecca was meant to serve multiple purposes. Destroying your reputation would eliminate a potential threat to his operations. Your security firm has the capability to expose his activities. Simultaneously, creating a scandal involving Councilman Hayes would remove political opposition to his development projects." Park's fingers flew across his keyboard. I'm finding connections between web shell companies and several other recent cases of suspected fraud. This isn't opportunistic crime, it's systematic. What about Rebecca? Danny asked. How much does she know about Webb's broader activities? Torres consulted his notes. Based on our surveillance, she appears to be a useful idiot. Webb is providing her with housing and legal support, but she doesn't seem aware of the larger conspiracy. Vincent was the primary connection, and with him eliminated, she's isolated and increasingly dependent on Webb support. Morrison leaned forward. That dependency gives us an opportunity. If we can demonstrate that Rebecca has been manipulated into participating in criminal activities, we might be able to flip her against Webb. And if she won't cooperate, Morrison's smile was cold. Then she'll face the consequences of her choices. Federal conspiracy charges tend to be very persuasive. As the evening progressed, the scope of the operation expanded. Morrison made phone calls to contacts in various federal agencies, each conversation adding another layer to their understanding of Webb's criminal network. Danny realized he was no longer fighting a personal battle against an unfaithful wife and her accomplices. He was part of a federal investigation into a major criminal conspiracy. But more importantly, he now had the resources and authority to protect his daughters while ensuring that everyone who'd threatened his family faced appropriate consequences. Jack, Danny said as the meeting wound down, I appreciate everything you're doing, but I need to ask, what's your personal interest in this? We haven't spoken in 5 years. Morrison's expression became serious. Danny, do you remember the Kandahar operation? When you stayed behind to ensure the rest of the team made it out. Ancient history. Not to me. You saved 8 lives that day, including mine. When you called asking for help, there was never any question about my response. Morrison stood and gathered his materials. Besides, men like Webb represent everything we spent our military careers fighting against. People who use power and connections to prey on others. As the federal agents prepared to leave, Morrison turned back to Danny one final time. Danny, this investigation will likely take several weeks to reach fruition. In the meantime, Webb will undoubtedly escalate his efforts to destroy you. Are you prepared for that? Danny looked up the stairs toward his daughter's bedrooms, then back at Morrison. Jack, these people made the mistake of threatening my children. I've been prepared for war since the moment they walked into my house. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Good, because war is exactly what they're going to get. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. 2 weeks into the federal investigation, Marcus Webb made his first serious mistake. Frustrated by the failure of the forged court order and Danny's apparent immunity from legal pressure, Webb decided to apply more direct intimidation tactics. Danny was reviewing security footage from his home cameras when he spotted the surveillance team. 2 men in a nondescript sedan had been parked across from his house for 3 consecutive mornings, photographing his routine and the twins' activities. A less experienced target might have missed them, but Danny had spent years teaching corporate executives how to identify exactly this type of threat. Instead of confronting the surveillance team directly, Danny called Morrison with the vehicle's license plate number. Within an hour, he had a complete profile of both men, Thomas Reed and Alan Voss, former police officers who'd been terminated for excessive force and now worked as private security for various clients with flexible ethical standards. Perfect, Morrison said over the phone. Webb's escalation gives us the pretext we need to move against him directly. That afternoon, while the twins were at summer camp, Danny implemented a plan that would have made his old military unit proud. Using his home security system and some carefully placed equipment borrowed from Morrison's team, he created a comprehensive surveillance net around his property. At 2 p.m., exactly as Danny had predicted, Rebecca appeared at his front door. She looked haggard and nervous, clearly operating under instructions she didn't fully understand. Danny, we need to talk, she said when he opened the door. Do we? I thought our lawyers were handling all communication. Please, this is about Emma and Sophie. Danny stepped aside to let her enter, noting how her eyes quickly scanned the room as if looking for something specific. Behind her, he could see Reed and Voss adjusting their position to maintain visual contact with his house. What about the girls, Rebecca? She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands shaking slightly. I've been thinking about everything that happened. Maybe we rushed into this separation. Maybe we could work things out. Danny studied her face, recognizing the signs of someone reciting a script they'd memorized but didn't believe. That's interesting timing. 2 weeks ago, you were eager to leave. What's changed? I miss them. I miss you. I made a mistake with Vincent, but that doesn't mean we can't fix this. And what does Marcus Webb think about this sudden change of heart? Rebecca's face went white. I don't know what you mean. Rebecca, you're living in his house, he's paying your legal fees, and his employees are watching my home as we speak. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? She stood abruptly, moving toward the kitchen. Danny followed, noting how she positioned herself near the window that provided the best view of the backyard where the twins usually played. Danny, you're being paranoid. I just want my family back. Your family? The same family you destroyed with 11 years of lies. As Rebecca continued her half-hearted attempts at reconciliation, Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. Package delivered. Audio, video recording in progress. Keep her talking. Danny realized that Morrison's team had been listening to the entire conversation, gathering evidence of Rebecca's participation in Webb's conspiracy. Whatever she thought she was doing, she was actually providing federal investigators with real-time evidence of criminal activity. Rebecca, let me ask you something. When Vincent first contacted you 8 months ago, did he mention Marcus Webb? I know, why would it? Because Vincent has been working for Webb for months. Their plan wasn't just about your personal relationship. It was about using our marriage and our daughters as tools in a much larger scheme. Rebecca's composure began to crack. That's not true. Vincent said he wanted to be a father to the girls. Vincent is dead, Rebecca. The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, gripping the kitchen counter for support. What? Vincent's gambling debts caught up with him. The people he owed money to weren't interested in payment plans. Danny's voice was matter-of-fact, showing no emotion. He died 3 days after he left this house. Rebecca sank into a kitchen chair, her face pale with shock. You're lying. Am I? When was the last time you heard from him directly? Not through Webb, not through intermediaries. When did Vincent himself last contact you? The silence stretched between them as Rebecca realized she hadn't heard from Vincent since that first night at Webb's house. My God, she whispered. Marcus said Vincent had to leave town for a while, that it wasn't safe for him to contact me directly. Webb used Vincent to destroy our marriage. Then he used Vincent's death to control you. You're not his partner in this. Rebecca, you're his prisoner. Danny's phone rang. It was Morrison, and his voice carried urgent authority. Danny, we need to move now. Webb's people are mobilizing for what appears to be a direct assault on your location. Get Rebecca and get out. Through the kitchen window, Danny could see Reed and Voss exiting their vehicle, joined by 3 other men emerging from a panel van that had just arrived. All 5 men were armed and moving with military precision toward his house. Rebecca, listen to me very carefully. Marcus Webb has been using you to get to me, and now he's decided that subtlety isn't working. Those men outside are here to either kidnap you or eliminate both of us. Rebecca looked out the window and saw the armed men approaching. Oh God, what have I done? You made mistakes, but you can still fix them. Do exactly what I tell you, and we might both survive this. Danny moved to a concealed panel in his kitchen wall and retrieved 2 tactical vests and a pair of firearms. His home security hadn't just been about cameras and alarms. He'd always maintained the ability to defend his family against serious threats. Put this on, he ordered, handing Rebecca a vest. We're going to move to the basement safe room. Once we're there, you're going to tell federal investigators everything you know about Marcus Webb's operation. Federal investigators? Rebecca, this stopped being about our marriage the moment Webb decided to forge court documents and threaten our children. You're now a witness in a federal criminal investigation. As they moved toward the basement, Danny's house erupted in chaos. The front door exploded inward as Webb's men breached the entrance, their shouts echoing through the rooms above. But Danny had spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. His basement safe room was more than just a hiding place. It was a tactical command center with independent communication systems and multiple escape routes. As they settled into the reinforced space, Rebecca broke down completely. "Danny, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. When Vincent came back, I thought maybe I could have the life I'd always wondered about. But then Marcus got involved, and everything became so complicated. Tell me about Webb's operation. What does he have you doing besides playing the role of abused wife? He's been asking me questions about your business, your clients, your security procedures. He wanted to know about your relationship with city officials, especially Robert Hayes." Above them, the sounds of the tactical assault continued, but Danny noticed they were becoming more organized, more professional. Webb's men weren't just searching. They were being systematically hunted by Morrison's team. "Rebecca, I need you to understand something. When this is over, you're going to face serious legal consequences for your role in this conspiracy. But if you cooperate fully with the federal investigation, you might avoid prison and retain some level of custody rights with the twins. And if I don't cooperate," Danny's voice was cold and final, "then you'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison, and Emma and Sophie will grow up knowing their mother chose a criminal conspiracy over their well-being." The sound from upstairs gradually subsided, replaced by the organized voices of law enforcement securing the scene. Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. "Targets neutralized. Scene secure. Ready for extraction." As they prepared to leave the safe room, Rebecca grabbed Danny's arm one final time. "Danny, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" Danny looked at the woman who'd shared his life for 12 years, who'd borne the children he'd raised as his own, who'd nearly destroyed everything he'd built through her selfishness and deception. "Rebecca, forgiveness isn't about what I'm capable of. It's about what you've earned, and you haven't earned it." Chapter 7, Justice Served. The aftermath of the assault on Danny's house played out like a carefully orchestrated symphony of law enforcement efficiency. Morrison's team had not only neutralized Webb's hire mercenaries, but had done so in a way that maximized the legal consequences for everyone involved. Thomas Reed and Alan Voss, the former police officers who'd been conducting surveillance, were now facing federal charges for conspiracy to commit kidnapping and armed assault. The three additional men who'd participated in the home invasion were career criminals with outstanding warrants, ensuring they be removed from circulation for the foreseeable future. But the real prize was Marcus Webb himself. Danny sat in the federal building's conference room, watching through one-way glass as FBI agents questioned Webb. The real estate developer's arrogance had evaporated the moment he realized the scope of the evidence against him. "Mr. Webb," Agent Torres was saying, "we have recorded conversations between you and Rebecca Rourke discussing the forged court documents. We have financial records showing payments to Vincent Castellano for services related to disrupting the Rourke marriage. We have documentation of your attempts to manipulate city council decisions through blackmail and intimidation." Webb's expensive lawyer whispered urgently in his client's ear, but Webb shook his head stubbornly. "I want to make a deal," Webb announced, ignoring his attorney's protests. Morrison, who was standing next to Danny, smiled grimly. "And there it is. When rats realize the ship is sinking, they start looking for lifeboats." Over the next 3 hours, Webb provided federal investigators with a comprehensive breakdown of his criminal operations. The real estate fraud was just one component of a larger enterprise that included defense contract manipulation, political bribery, and money laundering through offshore shell companies. But more importantly for Danny's personal situation, Webb detailed exactly how he'd manipulated Rebecca and used Vincent to destroy Danny's marriage. "Castellano came to me 8 months ago," Webb explained to the investigators. "He owed serious money to some very dangerous people, and he needed a way to generate income quickly. He knew about his relationship with Rebecca Rourke and suggested we could use that connection to pressure her husband." "Pressure him how?" Agent Torres asked. "Rourke's security firm had been asking questions about some of my development projects. His neighbor, Robert Hayes, had been blocking my Oak Ridge development, and I needed leverage to change his position. If I could create a scandal involving Rourke, make him look like an abusive, controlling husband, it would discredit Hayes by association." Danny felt a cold satisfaction as he listened to Webb destroy himself with his own confession. The man had orchestrated the destruction of Danny's family as a business strategy, treating human lives like chess pieces in his larger game. And Rebecca Rourke's cooperation? Torres continued. She was easy to manipulate once Castellano convinced her that Rourke wasn't the biological father of her children. She genuinely believed she was doing what was best for the kids by connecting them with their real father. When Castellano disappeared, she was desperate enough to accept my help without asking too many questions. Morrison leaned over to Danny. That's everything we need. Webb just confessed to conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and about 6 other federal felonies. He'll be lucky to see freedom again before he's 80. But Danny's attention was focused on the smaller conference room, where Rebecca was providing her own statement to investigators. Unlike Webb, she appeared genuinely remorseful. Her testimony focused on taking responsibility for her actions rather than minimizing her culpability. I knew what I was doing was wrong, she was saying to Agent Park. But I convinced myself it was about giving Emma and Sophie a chance to know their biological father. I didn't understand the larger conspiracy until it was too late. Mrs. Rourke, Park said gently, you understand that your cooperation with this investigation doesn't eliminate the legal consequences of your actions? I understand. I've destroyed my marriage, traumatized my children, and participated in criminal activities. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to make sure Marcus Webb faces justice for what he's done. Through the glass, Danny watched his wife of 12 years take full responsibility for the devastation she'd helped create. Part of him felt a flicker of the love that had once existed between them, but was overwhelmed by the cold fury that had sustained him through the past month. As the interrogations concluded, Morrison joined Danny in the hallway outside the conference rooms. It's over, Danny. Webb will plead guilty to avoid a life sentence, but he's looking at 25 to 30 years minimum. Rebecca's cooperation will earn her a reduced sentence, probably 3 to 5 years, with most of it suspended in exchange for her testimony. And custody of the twins? Given her criminal conviction and cooperation with a conspiracy against their welfare, the court will likely award you full custody with minimal supervised visitation rights for Rebecca. Danny nodded, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but the cost had been enormous. What about Vincent's biological relationship to the girls? Would that complicate custody? Morrison's expression darkened. Vincent Castellano is dead, and his criminal activities prior to his death would have disqualified him from any parental rights anyway. The girls' birth certificates list you as their father, and you've been their primary caregiver for their entire lives. No court in the country will question your parental rights. As they walked through the federal building, Danny felt a strange sense of completion. The war that had begun on Father's Day was ending exactly 1 month later, with his enemies defeated and his family protected. But as they reached the parking garage, Morrison stopped him with a serious expression. Danny, there's one more thing you need to know. Our investigation into Webb's network uncovered something else. He wasn't working alone. He had partners, people with even more resources and fewer scruples. Taking him down will likely draw their attention to you. Are you saying this isn't over? I'm saying that men like Webb are replaceable parts in much larger machines. You've won this battle decisively, but the war against people who prey on families like yours never really ends. Danny considered this as he walked to his car. He'd spent the past month learning that he was capable of fighting back against people who threatened his family with a ruthlessness that surprised even him. The question now was whether he wanted to continue that fight or focus on rebuilding his life with his daughters. As he drove home, Danny made his decision. He would focus on Emma and Sophie, helping them heal from the trauma of their mother's betrayal and building a new life based on truth rather than deception. But he would also remain vigilant, ready to respond with overwhelming force if anyone ever threatened his family again. Some men learned to forgive and forget. Danny had learned something different. Sometimes the best protection for the people you love is ensuring that those who would harm them face consequences so severe that others think twice before following their example. Chapter 8. Rebuilding. 6 months after the federal investigation concluded, Danny stood in the kitchen of his home preparing breakfast for Emma and Sophie. The house felt different now, not just because Rebecca was gone, but because the foundation of lies that had supported their family life for 11 years had been replaced with something more solid: truth. The twins had handled their mother's absence better than Danny had expected. Child psychologist Dr. Maria Santos had explained that children were remarkably resilient when the adults in their lives provided consistency and honesty. Danny had followed her advice, answering their questions about Rebecca's situation with age-appropriate truth rather than comforting lies. "Daddy," Sophie said as she set the table, "Mrs. Patterson asked me yesterday if Mommy was coming to the school play." Mrs. Patterson was the twins' fifth-grade teacher, and Danny appreciated her direct approach to handling the family's changed circumstances. "What did you tell her, sweetheart?" "I told her that Mommy made some bad choices and has to face consequences, but that you'll be there for sure." Danny felt a surge of pride at his daughter's mature response. Both girls had developed a sophisticated understanding of adult consequences that would serve them well throughout their lives. Emma looked up from her homework. "Daddy, some kids at school said their parents are getting divorced because they don't love each other anymore. Is that why you and Mommy got divorced?" This was the question Danny had been preparing for since the custody hearing 6 months ago. Dr. Santos had helped him develop an explanation that was truthful without being unnecessarily harsh. "Emma, your mother and I got divorced because she made choices that broke the trust our marriage was built on. When adults can't trust each other, they can't build a healthy family together." "But you still love us, right?" Sophie asked, echoing the fundamental fear that Dr. Santos had warned him about. "Girls, look at me." Danny waited until both twins met his eyes. "I will love you until the day I die, and every day after that. Nothing your mother did, nothing anyone else could ever do, will change that. You are my daughters, and I am your father. That's permanent." The security and confidence in their expressions reminded Danny why he'd fought so hard to protect them. These two girls deserved a childhood built on stability and truth, not the shifting foundations of adult deception. Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. New client consultation at 10 a.m. High-profile corporate security assessment. Since the conclusion of the web investigation, Rourke Security Solutions had experienced unexpected growth. Word had spread through certain circles that Danny Rourke was someone who could handle complex threats with absolute discretion and overwhelming effectiveness. Corporate executives facing extortion, politicians dealing with blackmail, and wealthy families concerned about kidnapping threats had all sought his services. The irony wasn't lost on Danny that his personal tragedy had enhanced his professional reputation, but he'd learned to compartmentalize such contradictions. After dropping the twins at school, Danny drove to his office for the client consultation. The prospective client was Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Chief Technology Officer for a major pharmaceutical company. "Mr. Rourke," Dr. Walsh began, "I need your help with a delicate situation. My company has developed a breakthrough treatment for pediatric cancer, but we've received threats from a group that claims our research involves unethical practices." Danny listened as Dr. Walsh explained the complexity of her situation. Animal rights activists had targeted her research facility, but the threats had escalated beyond typical protest activities to include personal threats against her teenage daughter. "Dr. Walsh, have you involved law enforcement?" "The FBI is investigating, but they've advised me to hire private security for my family while they pursue the threat actors. Your name came highly recommended." As Danny reviewed the case file, he recognized patterns similar to the web conspiracy, organized harassment designed to pressure specific business decisions through personal intimidation. "I can help you," Danny said, "but I want you to understand how I operate. I don't just provide passive protection. If someone threatens your family, I identify them, neutralize the threat, and ensure they face appropriate consequences." Dr. Walsh studied his expression carefully. "Mr. Rourke, I've heard that you have a very direct approach to problem solving. Given what my daughter is facing, that's exactly what I want." Over the next hour, Danny developed a comprehensive security plan that included protection for Dr. Walsh's daughter, investigation of the threat network, and proactive measures to discourage future targeting. But more importantly, he felt the familiar satisfaction of using his skills to protect another family from the kind of predators who'd attacked his own. That evening, as Danny helped the twins with their homework, Emma looked up with a thoughtful expression. "Daddy, at school today, Mrs. Patterson was talking about how some people choose to be heroes and some people choose to be villains. Which one are you?" The question caught Danny off guard. He'd never thought of himself in those terms, but as he considered everything that had happened over the past months, he realized his daughters were developing their own understanding of moral complexity. "Emma, I think most people are capable of being both heroes and villains, depending on the situation. What matters is what you choose to protect, and how far you're willing to go to protect it." Sophie joined the conversation. "So, when someone threatens our family, you choose to be the hero?" "That's right, sweetheart. When someone threatens the people I love, I choose to be whatever I need to be to keep them safe." Both girls seemed satisfied with this explanation, returning to their homework with the easy acceptance of children who trusted their father completely. Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Danny stood in his backyard looking up at the treehouse he'd built for them 3 years ago. The structure had survived the chaos of the past year unchanged, a symbol of the stability he'd tried to provide despite the foundation of lies beneath their family life. His phone rang. It was Morrison, calling from Washington. "Danny, I wanted to give you an update on the web network investigation. We've identified 3 more individuals involved in similar operations across the country. If you're interested, we could use your expertise on a consulting basis." Danny considered the offer. The prospect of hunting predators who threatened families was appealing, but his priority remained clear. "Jack, I appreciate the offer, but my focus is on rebuilding my daughters' lives. Maybe in a few years, when they're older and more settled." "I understand. But Danny, if you ever change your mind, the offer stands. Men with your particular combination of skills and motivation are rare." After ending the call, Danny walked through his house, checking locks and security systems as had become his nightly routine. The physical security measures were probably unnecessary now, but they represented something more important: his commitment to ensuring that nothing and no one would ever again threaten the family he'd built. As he passed the twins' rooms, he could hear their peaceful breathing through the slightly open doors. Emma and Sophie would grow up knowing that their father was someone who kept his promises, who protected what he loved, and who never allowed predators to succeed. They would also grow up understanding that some betrayals were unforgivable, that actions had permanent consequences, and that the people who truly loved them would never compromise their safety for personal gain. These were harsh lessons for children to learn, but Danny had concluded that children who understood these realities were better prepared to navigate a world that could be both beautiful and dangerous. Chapter 9. The Final Truth. 1 year after the last Father's Day, Danny found himself sitting across from Rebecca in the visiting room of the federal minimum security facility where she was serving her sentence. She looked older, thinner, but there was a clarity in her eyes that hadn't been there during the chaos of the Webb investigation. The decision to bring Emma and Sophie for this supervised visit hadn't been easy. Dr. Santos had recommended it as part of their ongoing therapy, arguing that the twins needed closure with their mother to fully process their family's transformation. "Girls," Rebecca said softly, her voice catching with emotion, "you've grown so much." Emma and Sophie sat close to Danny, their body language reflecting the complex mixture of love and wariness they felt toward their mother. They'd spent months in therapy processing Rebecca's betrayal, and while they'd reached a point of understanding, forgiveness remained elusive. "Hi, Mommy," Sophie said quietly. "Daddy said you wanted to see us." "I did. I wanted to apologize to you both for the choices I made. I wanted you to know that everything that happened was my fault, not yours, and certainly not your father's fault." Emma, now 11 and displaying increasing emotional maturity, studied her mother's face carefully. "Mrs. Santos said you were confused about what was right and what was wrong." "That's true, honey. I let other people convince me to make bad decisions, and I hurt the people I loved most because of it." Danny remained silent, allowing the twins to navigate their own emotional responses to seeing Rebecca. This visit was about their needs, not his feelings about their mother's betrayal. "Mommy," Sophie asked, "are you going to come home when you get out of jail?" Rebecca glanced at Danny before answering. No, sweetheart. Your father and I aren't married anymore, and I can't live with you. But I hope that someday, when you're older, we can spend time together if you want to. Will you lie to us again? Emma's question was direct and uncompromising. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Emma, I promise I will never lie to you again. Ever. I've learned that lies hurt people, especially the people we love. The visit continued for another hour, with Rebecca answering the twins' questions honestly and taking full responsibility for the consequences of her actions. Danny found himself impressed by her growth during incarceration, even as he remained unmoved by her obvious remorse. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca addressed Danny directly for the first time. Danny, I know you'll never forgive me, and I understand why. But I want you to know that watching you protect Emma and Sophie this past year has shown me what real love looks like. They're lucky to have you as their father. Danny's response was measured and final. Rebecca, the girls will always know that you're their mother, and they'll make their own decisions about what relationship they want with you as they get older. But you're right about one thing: I will never forgive you. Some betrayals are permanent. The drive home was quiet, with both twins processing the emotional complexity of seeing their mother in prison. As they pulled into their driveway, Emma spoke up. Daddy, do you think Mommy really learned her lesson? I think your mother understands the consequences of her choices now. Whether that's the same as learning her lesson, only time will tell. Sophie leaned against Danny's shoulder. I'm glad we live with you and not with her. Why is that, sweetheart? Because you never lie to us, even when the truth is hard. Mommy lied because she thought it would be easier, but it made everything worse. That evening, Danny received a call from Dr. Walsh, the pharmaceutical executive whose case he'd resolved 6 months earlier. The animal rights extremists who'd threatened her family were now serving federal sentences for domestic terrorism, and her daughter had returned to a normal teenage life. Mr. Rourke, I want to thank you again for everything you did for my family. But I'm calling because I have a friend who's facing a similar situation. Would you be willing to help? Danny considered the request. His business was thriving, his daughters were healing and growing stronger, and he'd discovered a sense of purpose in protecting other families from the kind of predators who'd attacked his own. Dr. Walsh, have your friend call my office tomorrow. We'll discuss the situation and determine what kind of assistance might be appropriate. After ending the call, Danny walked upstairs to check on the twins. Emma was reading in bed, while Sophie was working on a painting at her desk. Daddy, Sophie said, not looking up from her artwork, I painted this for you. The painting showed a man and 2 girls standing in front of a house, with a large tree in the background. The figures were simple but recognizable, and the overall composition radiated warmth and security. It's beautiful, sweetheart. What's the tree? That's our treehouse. I want to paint our family the way it really is now. Danny studied the painting more carefully. There was no figure representing Rebecca, no visual reference to the family structure that had existed for the first 10 years of their lives. Sophie had painted their current reality, a father and his daughters, complete and self-sufficient. Sophie, where would you put Mommy in this painting if you wanted to include her? Sophie considered the question seriously. I think she would be in a different painting. Maybe visiting sometimes, but not living here. This painting is about our real family. Emma looked up from her book. Daddy, Mrs. Patterson asked us to write an essay about our heroes. I wrote about you. What did you say? I wrote that heroes are people who protect the people they love, even when it's hard. And that real heroes don't just fight bad guys in movies. They fight bad guys in real life, too. As Danny tucked both girls into bed, he reflected on the transformation their family had undergone. A year ago, they'd been living a lie that felt comfortable and stable. Today, they were living a truth that was sometimes difficult, but always authentic. Emma and Sophie would grow up understanding that love meant protection, that trust had to be earned and maintained, and that some people would always choose their own interests over the welfare of others. They would also understand that when faced with such people, the appropriate response was swift, decisive, and permanent. These were not lessons Danny had planned to teach his daughters at such a young age, but circumstances had forced his hand. Now, watching them process complex moral realities with wisdom beyond their years. He felt confident he'd made the right choices. The last Father's Day had indeed been the end of something, the end of a family built on deception and compromise. But it had also been the beginning of something stronger, a family built on truth, protection, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughters. As Danny settled into his own bed, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Vincent Castellano was dead, Marcus Webb was serving a life sentence, and Rebecca was learning the consequences of betrayal. His daughters were safe, his business was thriving, and anyone who might consider threatening his family in the future would think twice after learning what had happened to the last people who'd made that mistake. Some men forgave. Some men forgot. Danny Rourke protected what he loved and eliminated threats to his family with the precision and ruthlessness of someone who understood that the price of peace was eternal vigilance. The war for his family's future was over. He had won. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.